argue that what you've done and what I've done to a lesser extent is to learn a lot from other people's mistakes. That is really a much more pleasant way to learn hard lessons. And we have really worked at that over the years, partly because we find it so interesting, the great variety of human mistakes and their causes. And I think this constant study of other people's disasters and other people's errors has helped us enormously. Don't you, Warren?
Oh, yeah, well, that's true. In terms of reading of financial, I've always been absolutely absorbed with reading about disasters.
Yeah.
And there's no question. I mean, when you look at the folly of humans, I've focused on the folly in the financial area. There's all kinds of folly elsewhere. But just the financial area will give you plenty of material if you like to be a follower of folly. And I do think that understanding, and that's what gave us some advantage over these people that had IQs of 180, and could do things with math that we couldn't do. They really just didn't have an understanding of how human beings behaved and what happens. 2008 was a good example of that too. So we have been a student of other people's folly, and it served us well. We made mistakes. We'll make more mistakes. We think not so much. We think in terms of not exposing ourselves to any mistakes that could really hurt our ability to play tomorrow. And so we are always thinking about, worst case situations. And there are, on the other hand, we have a natural instinct to do things big, both of us. So we have to think about whether we're doing anything really big that could have really terrible consequences. And I would say this, that I don't worry much about mistakes. I mean, the idea of learning from mistakes, the next mistake is something different. I mean, so I do not sit around and think about my mistakes and think about things I'm going to do differently in the future or anything of the sort. I would say that you may get some advantage. I think I've learned something over the years. I haven't learned more about a basic investment philosophy. I got that when I was 19, and I still have. I think I've learned more about people over the years, and I'll make mistakes with people, and that's inevitable. But I think I'll make more good judgments about people. I'll recognize the extraordinary ones better than I would have 40 or 50 years ago. So I think that improves, but I don't think it improves by certainly any conscious sitting around and focusing on what mistake that I make with that person or this person. I just don't operate that way.
We can't do with our present resources what we did once. There are a lot of things I can't do that I used to do better.
Yeah, well, you can confess to those, Charlie.
And
well, but I think he may be driving at the point that have we learned things in managing since we were at that level where we could do even better with $1 million now than we could have done with $1 million then? And I would say the answer to that is yes. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's true. There's enough craziness out there. If you have endless time and only a very small amount of money, I think you could find ways to do pretty well.
And in the course of 50 or so years, we have probably learned more or been exposed to more that if we were back at the $1 million level, we would know more places to look, I think.
Well, I say what's interesting about Berkshire, and many of you have been around for so long, you've actually seen it happen. Berkshire's record would have been terrible compared to the way it turned out if Warren hadn't kept learning all the way. I mean, each decade to make the record decent, he had to learn to do some things he didn't know how to do at the start of the decade. And I think that's pretty much the human condition. And of course, he's getting old. I worry about him a lot.
I'll resist commenting. Okay, station 3.
What will it take to get America growing by 4% again?
Well, Charlie, that's too easy for me. You take it.
A lot.
Doing it.
A lot. It's not going to be easy.
No, but if population grows 1% a year and GDP in real terms grows 2.5% a year, by the standards of 2,000 or 5,000 years, that would be remarkable. I mean, it would, it would result in, a quadrupling of real GDP per capita every century. We don't. It's nice to have 4% in real terms, but 2.5%. It may be slow in getting us out from the slump that we entered into a few years ago, but it's a remarkable rate of growth for a country that already enjoys a very high standard of living. It's a remarkable rate of growth for a country that has 1% a year gain in population. It is huge over one person's lifetime. I've used this a lot of times, but in my lifetime, the real GDP per capita has increased 6 for 1.
But it's nowhere near 4% per annum.
No, it's staggering. It's staggering. And we have $48,000 or thereabouts of GDP per capita in the United States. We are unbelievably rich, but an awful lot of people are not feeling that way, and in many cases for good reason. But we've got a tremendous country to work for. I mean, to work with. It's got all kinds of strengths, and it has this huge abundance that if my parents back in 1930, if you'd told my mother and father that when I was 81, that I would be living in a country that had 6 times the per capita output of their day, they would have thought, that this would be a utopia. And it hasn't been bad, I might add. But our country is not a mess. Our politics may be a mess, but the output is terrific. Charlie, if you had to guess at the real growth rate per capita over the next 20 years in the United States, what do you think it would be?
That's after inflation.
Oh, no, this is just real.
Right, yeah, real. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, after taking inflation out of it.
Yeah.
Well, if God would make the guarantee, I would settle for a very low figure. I think we're a very mature economy with a lot of social safety net and a lot of competition from new nations rising. I think 1% per capita in real growth would be a sensational result.
Yeah, which in 20 years means people would be living close to 25% better on average.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not bad.
So I think
that's the next generation. In one generation, they improve.
When you get your expectations too high, when you think that 4% is what the world ought to provide you, you're asking for trouble.
It won't do it.
That's what happened in the housing boom. People got these foolish dreams, and then they just started doing foolish things to try and reach unattainable objectives.
But if you had the 1%, you would be talking about each generation living something over 20% better than their parents did.
From this base, it would be a sensational result.
And we'll probably get it, in my view. But, it won't come in even increments, but this system still works. It works. And incidentally, you've actually seen, even after the incredible crash, in effect, that we had in fall of 2008, you've seen enormous amount of resilience here, and of course you compare it with Europe, and it looks particularly strong. But
Yes, but the resilience has been better for the businesses than it has been for
Yeah.
the employment
yeah,
situation, which is too bad.
yeah, business has done extraordinarily well. You know, business profits as a percentage of GDP were right at the height, last year, and of course our own were. I mean, and that produces a lot of strains on the political system.